I'll be happy. Go ahead and start. It is the, thank you, January 13th Finance Committee meeting of the Yarmouth Finance Committee. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law 30A, subsection 18, and the Governor's March 15th, 2020 order imposing a limitation on the number of people that may gather in one location. This meeting will be conducted via remote participation. Specific information such as instructions and guidelines for remote by members of the public and or parties with a right and or requirement to attend this meeting can be found on the town website. There will be no public portion of this meeting, and there will be presentations by the division heads of the Department of Community Services who are here and in attendance. We are all set. And would you take a roll call, which includes the right to record?
Great, thank you. Welcome, everybody. We could start it with Robert.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Stephanie.
Aye.
George.
Aye.
Jack.
Got to take that mute off, Jack.
I'm going to take the mute off.
Here.
Nate.
Aye.
And I myself is here as well. So we have on the agenda today, let me jump over to that. We have a whole host of presenters with us from the community services departments. We do not have any meeting minutes to go over. Again, we will get to those at a later date once they're recorded in paper format. We have natural resources as our first presenter. Carl is somewhere here. Carl, are you there?
I am.
Okay. And Pat, do you have a presentation for us to put up, or are you not going to be able to do that?
I thought I just opened it on share. Hold on a minute and I will look at my share screen again. There we are.
Great. Carl, it's all yours.
All right, thank you very much. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Carl Von Hoen. I'm the Director of the Division Natural Resource for the town of Yarmouth. The presentation that is on the screen that you'll be following through this is the overview of the natural resources mission. For those of you who aren't familiar with us, we preserve, promote, and manage the natural resources and waters and wild animal resources of the town of Yarmouth, and ensures public safety of all residents and visitors alike through education, enforcement of local, state, and federal environmental, maritime, and domestic animal laws. Some of the key points and highlights of this past year, and you'll probably hear this from others because it's by all means a group effort on a lot of these projects. Parkers River Route 28 Bridge Project, the Baxter Mill Dam and Fishway Project, which was the bringing the Baxter Mill Dam up to state code, as well as revamping the Fishway there to improve fish passage and reestablish the herring run that goes all the way up to Little Sandy Pond. We performed a number of terrestrial habitat restoration projects. Both were used with mechanical means of brush and undergrowth removal and through fire, through prescribed burns. All this is done to improve wildlife habitat, as well as improve the public safety in the sense of these prescribed burns remove litter from the undergrowth of the woods, so we don't end up with these fast-moving wildfires like you've seen out west. We've tried to manage our woodlands to try to prevent that. We performed or added on to our aquatic habitat restoration, our Yarmouth Fish Reef, which is about 2 miles south of mouth of Bass River. It's We added additional habitat material, and we've also worked out with the U.S. Coast Guard at no cost to utilize some of their large mooring systems for their large aids to navigations, which when they change them out, they bring the old concrete and marble or concrete or granite blocks that use for anchors and deploy them at the fishery for additional fish habitat, adding on to what we have there. We have, expanded and reestablished the recreational oyster fishery here in town. It is limited with COVID this year. We hope to have it extend up to New Year. Unfortunately, we had so many people harvesting oysters this year. We ran out and ended up having to close the season 2 weeks early. We also run a marine pump out waste boat, which we've pumped out more than 3,000 gallons of marine waste, so it's not ending up in our water bodies. We continue our community outreach with topics such as wastewater, sharks, emergency preparedness, wildlife issues, etc. And it was rather interesting this year with COVID. Everybody decided to, or was advised to, spend time outside. We have never seen such a dramatic increase on the uses of our waterways and our conservation areas as we did see this past summer. In turn, just on our waterways, we saw the numbers almost, or not quite double, to over 150. So it's been a very busy year for us in natural resources. The budget overview, as you see, has not moved much at all. And actually under wages and salaries have dropped slightly, primarily because we have 2 new natural resource officers. So there's been a cost savings on that. And our expense budget has level funded for next year. You do see some decreases in the expenses from 2020, all associated from COVID. Number of training sessions were canceled. But most importantly, our shellfish propagation funds were held up simply because the state put a hold on the recreational shellfish relay program because the fishermen were unable to fish, in turn pushing those relays off into this fiscal year. So we were unable to encumber those funds from last year to pay for it in this fiscal year. So that's why you see a drastic decrease from the actuals from 2020. We have transferred some funds into an account this fiscal year. So we'll still be able to conduct our shellfish relays, which will be essentially 2, one for this year and a makeup for last year, to try to keep our shell fisheries going. Challenges that are, of course, facing us, of course, are I'm sorry, the changes in the budgets. As I said, there isn't much there as far as changes. We only increases within the wages are contractual increases. And then, as I stated, the expense budgets were level funded. I wasn't watching the screen. I was looking at my slides in front of me and I had them out of order. So challenges facing our department, continuing increase in the public's request for services, scientific and field work that we're doing, water quality work, and whatnot, as well as a number of the unfunded mandates that have been put to us from state and federal, under state and federal standards. Some such as the shellfish safety regulations, which they have come up with a mandatory check-in for aquaculturists who are landing stock from their grants to prevent some of the shellfish diseases from making its way to the market. So mandatory icing and tagging requirements, those are all things that have been passed down to us from the state and federal government, which they are not able to do. And in turn, we have to do it if we're going to keep our waters open for shellfishing. Of course, continuing increases in costs for services and supplies. For those of you who have been around for a while, you'll remember that we have not increased our budgets under expenses since the cuts back in 2009, 10, 8, 9, and 10. So we're operating on a shoestring, trying to still provide services, maintain our equipment, and purchase supplies that we need to get the job done. Unfortunately, I think we may be needing to look at some increases for next year. So stay tuned for that. I hate saying we'll have to do it. Number of the grants that we've gotten funds for to take care of some of this have dried up and are no longer available. So we're going to need to take a look at the budget. Seasonal wages, of course, are hindering our recruitment. Some of the other towns are paying more, not a lot more, but they are paying more and trying to get good qualified seasonal workers in remains to be a challenge. Some of the other challenges that we're facing for our dredging and waterways maintenance is the Barnstable County dredge has some limitations and a significant demand on their resources. We were hoping to get the upper reaches of Bass River done this winter. Unfortunately, the dredge has been stuck in Bourne and has not made it out. Trying to work with the state to extend our permits so that we'll have a little cushion there if the county dredge does free up, but we're playing that by ear. And of course, the continual shoreline erosion, storm impacts, and natural process of erosion. And a lot of other issues, even dealing with the freshwater ponds that we really haven't been looking at too much, that we're just starting to look at, dealing with the abundance of algae, aquatic vegetation, due to excess nitrogen and phosphorus in our freshwater bodies. Recommendations to consider for addressing future challenges. As I stated, we are at our limits. Our staffing is still operating underneath the previous cuts. And the public demand has increased dramatically, as well as the issues dealing with water quality and some of the other waterways coordinations. So challenges and recommendations that we really need to take a look at is possibly bringing on some additional staff, whether it's full-time or part-time. Funding mechanism for some of the big ticket coastal infrastructure improvements. I've been working with the capital budget and Ed Centio, Municipal Finance, in trying to develop a plan to move forward. We have a significant number, 14 coastal structures across town that were built back in the 30s, 40s, and 50s, which are aging, and we're starting to have some problems with them. Prime example is Bass River Beach along the Bass River. We keep having washouts due to some failures in the wall. We've been piecemealing them together, but that's also a $1.6 million project. It's not an easy fix. We're talking about millions of dollars to start putting towards these infrastructures. And we're in the process of talking and trying to come together with some type of plan for the future so we can start addressing these issues before we have some catastrophic failures and we lose infrastructure. And then, of course, the implementation of the wastewater plan And full support of that have been right along, and we have been providing water quality testing through the SMAS program for nitrogen, and we'll continue to do that as we move forward. That is a brief overview of some of the things that we're doing and some of our challenges, and I'll entertain any questions.
Thanks, Carl. I appreciate the presentation. Anybody have any questions for Carl? Anybody? I have a question.
Thank you.
So I've seen your presentation a number of times over the past couple of years. And I know that there are a plethora of to-do items on your list that have the potential to be catastrophic events if they don't get addressed. And I know they have been maybe overlooked or postponed, or just money not in the budget for that. What happens if we have one of these, catastrophic events? What is the outcome, or what would we anticipate? It's not that we have a ton of money to be doing things like this, but are these things that we need to be looking at more seriously, because the cost to fix once it reaches the tipping point is catastrophic?
Yeah, there's all kinds of scenarios that could play out, and I'll just use Bass River Beach as the example. If we were to have a catastrophic failure of the wall along the river, we could be looking at losses to the fish pier, to the boat ramp, to the Pearl Harbor Memorial, to the beach parking lot, and all the sand between the parking lot and Bass River. Now, with that said, the amount of work that would need to be done to bring the wall back up to the standard that it needs to be, and it's a standard that's higher than what we currently have, of course, would take a significant amount of time. Now, if we had that type of failure, trying to do the construction work from land or from water would be cumbersome. It would have to, that's the only way we'd be able to do it. We propose to do it from land, as a proactive movement, but we may need to do it by water, which would increase the budget probably 40%, if not 50%. So a $1.6 million project in a proactive movement of trying to get it done, we would definitely be looking at over $2 million for the project of, so those additional costs. Now, there's still unknowns. Would the state allow us to put it back to where it was? I would hope that they would, but there's been a lot of discussions at the state levels. They don't like hard structures. They want soft structures. So that would be quarry rolls and banks and things that would allow some movement. That's a high velocity area. That stuff wouldn't work, but they could dictate to us, well, you need to do it and then you need to maintain that. And the cost for that is astronomical and would have to be done, I would have to say, almost every single year in that type of location. The other thing is they may say, well, it's eroded, but you can only place a wall at the shoreline that exists currently. Will not allow you to extend it out to where it was and then backfill that lost area. So there's some unknowns that are there that could, one, provide us with less of a resource there at that location. But more importantly, the cost would be astronomically more.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Stephanie?
Yeah. Carl, thank you for your presentation, and thank you for the work that you and your staff do. I got my shellfish license for the first time this summer, and I very much enjoyed it. Didn't get into the oystering yet, but we'll soon, I hope, next year. So I have a couple questions. So just dovetailing on Brian's comments and your response. So, and this is also a little bit of a question for Dan. How have we tried pursuing state bonding money, like an environmental bond bill or earmark or anything like that, in order to help get additional funds to do seawall revetment, et cetera? I know Representative, oh boy, his name is his spaced has come out of my head, but South Shore guy, Situate representative, has like led I think a caucus or something around the need for seawall investment. So I'm just curious to what extent we've pursued that, and I guess, Dan, more broadly, how often are we actually asking members of our legislative delegation to put some money in either a bond bill or the budget for us?
Carl, you want to go first?
Sure. We have been applying for grants for quite some time, trying to move forward. Part of the difficulties with some of these grants and moving forward is that the term, trying to meet sea level rise and resiliency in those areas. A number of our grant applications came close but didn't quite make it. And it's simply because we're looking to just replace a revetment wall with another revetment wall. And it didn't meet the agency's wish list for removing some of the hard structure. We have no choice there. I have sat in on a number of those coalitions to try to look at shoreline protection and resiliency. We have not, or we have made requests in the past for Seaport Council funding, as well as some environmental bond funding, but we haven't been successful.
Yeah, so to Carl's point, I think a couple things are going on. We have applied for dredging assistance money, and we've gotten some of that. The administration recently has put more emphasis on the seaport infrastructure grants, and we did receive a seaport grant. However, it won't really help out for what Carl's been talking about, but it was for the drive-in site. The MVP program seems in its latest iteration to be addressing a lot of these water or inundation related problems, but a lot of it's focused on culvert replacement. And I just got a notice today of grant available funds for culvert replacement. Earmarks haven't really been overly popular. We do put in requests on a variety of different things. One earmark we do have, actually it was in the environmental bond bill, is the $1 million for DHY. So it's kind of a mixed bag. And I think to Carl's point, which shouldn't be missed on this, is a lot of what he's talked about was continued protection of the coastline from infrastructure that was, kind of like yesteryear's infrastructure. And the trending today seems to be more with going back with this kind of concept of letting Mother Nature do its thing, restoring salt marshes to provide the buffering you need. So I think we're facing a little bit of a institutional challenge on our seafront, as opposed to if we had a plan that looked at reclaiming some property, say, if you will, to allow additional growth of salt marsh. So it'll be kind of tricky. And I think the best strategy would be to be ready with what I would call completed engineering plans, so that, frequently many of these projects are two steps. You have to get funding for engineering, and then you go get funding for construction. But in this case, because we're in kind of an uphill challenge, it might be better for the town, because I'm not sure if we'll ever get construction money of any magnitude, but to just go down the effort to generate with its own funds some design money, so we know, so that we have a project, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, shovel ready.
Yeah.
So when you go to the legislature and you happen to maybe get an earmark, it's ready to go, as opposed to sitting unclaimed for 18 months, 24 months. And its likelihood to get swept at that point is pretty significant.
Yeah.
So I wish I had better news for you, but we're competing in a pretty tough climate,
And to that point, Dan and I had talked about that a while ago. The Bass River project is shovel ready, because for that point, to try to make it look better and look like it's ready to go if funding did come available. I will be applying for a permit extension, another 3-year permit extension to keep those permits valid. So, we're still going to be in that positive position for the next 3 years as we continue to search for funding and moving
Carl,
forward.
is it DEP or CZM that's the issue,
It's
or both?
we've had a huge changeover in DEP. We've had a huge changeover in marine fisheries with Army Corps of Engineers, with so many of those agencies that and the people that are in those positions don't have the experience and are having a very hard time moving permits forward in a timely manner. We're entering into the permitting phase for our 10-year comprehensive dredge and beach nourishment plan. And I'm afraid I'm expecting this to take 2 years with how slow all of that is going. And that's just a re-permitting because we already hold the very first 10-year comprehensive plan in the Commonwealth in hopes that we would be able to alleviate some of the permitting issues. Typically you'd have to go back every 3 years. So this extended it out. So it was cost savings for the municipalities as well as work related to the agencies.
And is there, with any of these projects, and I because I'm new, so I'm not super familiar with them, but in terms of, Bass River, is there any kind of widening or anything that could potentially happen that would help with the flushing for our wastewater?
Yeah.
I know there's that argument for dredging, right?
Absolutely. The argument there is definitely for dredging, and I've been using that argument for 26 years. It's not just about navigation, it's about the overall health of the ecosystems and flushing. And that finally, it took probably 15 years before it started to take any traction. At the mouth, both those breakwaters, or the armament in front of Bass River Beach and the breakwater coming off of West Dennis Beach, provide a significant amount of protection, especially out of the southeast. So, I'll give you a little bit of history. The mouth of Bass River used to go around Boaters Beach and head down towards that rock island that's out off of West Dennis Beach. And there was a big bar that extended from Smuggler's Beach all the way out there that was only about 3 feet of water. So the Lighthouse Inn was actually a lighthouse for coming into Bass River. That's how everything wants to go in Nantucket Sound, to the east. But in our infinite wisdom, man's infinite wisdom, we straightened everything out, which causes problems. I don't think, in all honesty, widening the mouth will necessarily improve the flushing, because we have a relatively narrow river, from that point all the way up to Fallon's Pond.
Okay.
We've looked at that.
Okay. I always try to look at things and how can we kill two birds with one stone? And if there's
Well, the big one is the Route 6 bridges. I mean, we did go to DOT with the idea that those bridges are in a various state of disrepair, I suppose would be fair to say, and indicated that, with the planning that we did with the bike trail and the railroad structure, that did demonstrate a significant improvement in flushing already. So if this isn't on your radar screen, not only do you get a benefit from a traffic perspective, if you will, it would be great benefit to the community and to the watershed by opening up the abutments on that to allow a more natural flow of the river through that area, which would then, the practical reality would reduce the sewering load that would need to be done north of that location. So I think, to your point, there's only, you got all these different touch points that you would look for state assistance with. You've got to kind of prioritize and say, maybe we let the dozen or so less impactful ones go, and we put over the next 3 to 5 years all our energy into lobbying with Dennis, the state, over the Route 6 situation, and that would pay great dividends. Although to some degree. It would ignore some of these other problems, but certainly for bang for your buck, it would do an awful lot through Mother Nature's way to alleviate the nitrogen loading problem.
Yeah, yeah, I'm familiar with that whole situation with those bridges and the bike trail. I was when I worked with the congressman, part of putting together a meeting and getting approval from all those different agencies on it.
Well, there might be a chance if the Congress now actually pulls off an infrastructure bill, and I think that's been kind of a big hurdle that
For shovel ready
DOTs
is important.
Right. Well, yeah. Well, then to your point, we did the engineering work as it relates to the nitrogen load. Now it would be to push or nudge DOT along to get to the idea of engineering the bridge replacements so that you're ready in the event. I mean, there's going to be, at some point, we're going to have to do a transportation infrastructure bill at the federal level. And that's a perfect project for a cost share between the state and the feds.
Yeah. So, I know, like with Rep. Whalen, probably Senator Sear as well, like you said, a lot of political capital has been expended on DHY and also the school system. But I do recall from when I worked for Cleon that for a long time, historically, towns in the First Barn School District didn't come to their reps with, earmark requests. And so, I'm not sure what is next in terms of priorities, but especially given that, Rep. Whalen has a good relationship with the Baker administration, getting something in a bond bill that we could potentially get released, I think would be good to be thinking about. Last question, Carl, is just, in this sort of vein, with some of the things that you are looking at in terms of needs and plans that you talked about, are there any potential fees or other things that can be charged for some of the things that you're looking to do? Have you explored any revenue generation options?
Yeah, we just reviewed our fees from, across the Cape as well as some off Cape. And our fees are about 75, at the level of 75% of most fees. So, we're not at par with others. We're slightly above, but we're definitely not the highest in some of our fees. And they all fluctuate, whether it's shellfish or moorings or slips. So some are higher, some are lower, but we fall within the 3/4 range. So is there room for increase? It's that balancing act of, if we charge more for shellfish permits, are we going to get less people buying shellfish permits? And that has been seen in some other communities, same with moorings and slips, a little bit less with that, but you start to outprice yourself with some of that, especially with what we can offer. Our facilities aren't full service facilities that a private marina might have for our slips and moorings. So trying to, charge, a much higher rate is going to be difficult.
Yeah.
But, we have looked at that. We look at that every year. I run those comps every year to see if there's any place that we can, if we've seen a big increase with 50% of communities have gone up in their shellfish rates or slip rates or mooring rates, we can use this to bump them up. But we don't see a huge opportunity for that.
Okay. And are there any gaps in the private marketplace as far as marinas and whatnot, in terms of services, for example, that might be not being offered right now that we could offer? We have the right.
With those services are going to require additional staff.
Yeah.
And resources. Some of, I'll use an example. Ship shops used to have a tender service for folks that, had moorings down by their facility on Bass River. I don't believe they're doing that anymore. But most marinas are really trying to get as much service as they can to pull people into their facilities and charge top dollar.
Okay. I just always, like to think about if there are things that can be done, even if it takes a little money up front, that are going to ultimately end up generating revenue, like broadband, Dan and I have
Absolutely.
talked about a lot of times. That's something that we should explore. And I think, again, from a perspective of having to grow the town's finances to pay for the long-term big picture things that we need to do, we need to be thinking about that in every department. So thank you very much for
Absolutely.
your presentation. I'm all set.
Thank you.
Stephanie, if I could just jump on one more piece of that. The Capital Budget Committee has really made a priority of trying to push the bonding of over 10 years, a $30,000 bond, so that there are finances available, just like road work, to start working on our infrastructure. So Sandy Fife and Judy Tarver and the group have met again with Ed and also with Carl, and it's been a priority from the chairman of the Board of Selectmen to see if we can make this happen so that there is some bonding and we can start having some money in hand to do the engineering that's required, and actually some matching money as well if that opportunity comes up. So that you'll see that coming before you, I think, this year as a priority.
That'd be very interesting. I assume you mean 30 million.
I did, yeah, 30 million, yeah, 3 million a year. over
30,000
10
would not be.
Did I say not million? Yeah, yeah. 3 million a year every year for 10 years. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Do we have any further questions for Carl? All right, hearing none. Carl, thank you very much for your presentation. We appreciate it. Up next, we have Jane Kane with Library.
Jane, am I doing D or A with you? Jane, can you hear me? Hello? Brian, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
D. Patricia, D.
Thank you very much,
I'm
Jane.
sorry, I was muted.
Pat, your desktop terrifies me.
Yeah, well,
It's crazy.
She knows where everything is.
All right, Jane, you're all set. Take it away.
Sure, and I'll start with our mission. And as you folks probably know, the mission of the public library is to help people in people who seek information, further education, informal education, experiences, and cultural enrichment. We work with facts, we work with verifiable and up-to-date information resources, and we encourage folks to learn at every age, read at a young age, and keep that love of reading in their life. It's a great job. Thank you, Pat. A recap of 2020. Well, it started out really exciting. Yarmouth 2020 is the 400th anniversary of the Pilgrims coming to the Cape. They were in P-Town for 6 weeks before they headed over to Plymouth. And I was working with a team among different communities in Dennis and Harwich and further out on the Cape, Eastham and all, a group called Yarmouth 2020 to celebrate that 400th anniversary. We had programs, we had speakers, we had a dinner dance or a dinner event, all sorts of things planned for the 400th anniversary, and that didn't happen. It was supposed to kick off, I think it was about the middle of April, so it didn't happen. The Historical Society is wonderful. They've gone pretty virtual in their information sharing this year, and they've done a really good electronic weekly newsletter, and that's gonna have to be as much as we can accomplish this year with Yarmouth 2020. Yarmouth Reads was another project the Town Library Board has taken on for the past couple years, a one book, one town project, so that folks are excited about reading. Typically it's the same book, or it can be a version for young people and then a book for adults. And we had programs planned all around Where the Crawdads Sing, which has been on the New York Times bestseller list for 100 weeks or so. And so Yarmouth Reads came to a grinding halt as well. That was supposed to kick off at the end of March, and it hasn't. It won't. It didn't because of the pandemic. So once news came to all the department heads and all that we were going to close our facilities, the library, 2 buildings, West Yarmouth and South Yarmouth, closed to the public on March 16th. At that time, we furloughed a couple of our part-time library assistants who were front desk people mostly. Some of our substitute library assistants decided at that point, well, one of them resigned and decided that she didn't want to be called back. And then a couple of them have decided that they are just waiting until a better time to come back. So we had a bit of a challenge at that point in time. We closed to the public, and staff who were willing and able came into the buildings and worked their full shifts despite being closed to the public. We transitioned into offering different programs in different platforms. So we went virtual with some of our children's programs, a lot of our children's programs. We went virtual with some of our lecture series and things like that. We developed 2 new book groups that folks can attend on Zoom. So now we have a total of 3 library book groups. And this virtual transition is ongoing throughout the year, and apparently it's going to go on for months and months. So that's where we are with that. We enhanced our curbside pickup, which a lot of the libraries across the Cape have been doing and still do. Folks can call in or place their requests online for materials that they want, and they can come and pick them up at the library. Our statewide interlibrary loan delivery service was on hold for about 3.5 months, and that came back into action in the summertime, just in time for all the summer visitors. So that was good. On September 21st of this year, we gathered up our courage and decided that the time was right and the numbers were okay, that we could reopen to the public. So we did that. We limited the hours at each facility, the South Yarmouth Library and the West Yarmouth Library. And we limited the number of people who were allowed inside the building at one time so that they could maintain physical distance. I worked with Bruce and Mallory in the health division to make sure, in the health department, to make sure that we were doing the right thing according to CDC guidelines and the state recommendations and other national standards and all that for safety, mostly CDC guidelines. So we reopened to the public on September 21st, and it was lovely. Folks were happy to be back in the building and able to browse the collection. That lasted for about, I can't do the math right now. That lasted until December 4th. 7 or 8 weeks, I guess. So as of December 4th, given what's happening with the numbers and the condition of the pandemic, we're back to curbside only, and you know, it's going as well as it can. The patrons, the folks who visit our library, express to us their concern, express to us their frustration and their wish that things were better, but they're happy with whatever they can get. It sounds to me like that's what I'm hearing across the desk and over the phone when our folks are talking to them. Our reference librarian has been doing remote work. She is answering requests for information and for other things via her cell phone, or she can do one-on-one training with folks on iPad if they have tech help that they're looking for. Same with our technical services librarian, who also does our IT. She's able to help folks who need tech help. What we found was that folks were coming, folks who hadn't been lively and active in visiting the libraries were actually delighted that they were able to have something to carry them over through this pandemic. So we got a lot of new requests for library cards over the summer and the fall, which I thought was a pleasant surprise. Our circulation numbers, because we report them to the state every year, our circulation numbers remained the same or improved from the year before. So that was always that was a surprise to all of us. But what we're doing is we're flexing our muscles in terms of tech support, and we're doing as much as we can virtually, and we're hoping that this changes for the better soon. Okay, Pat, now we can go to the numbers. So let's see. We have a comparison of the past, well, a year ago, this current fiscal year, and the fiscal year to come. Bottom line numbers look pretty good. Our salary figures look really good, but what you're looking at for FY20 is an actual amount. So what happened at the end of the fiscal year that just ended, FY20, is that because we had reduced hours and reduced staffing, we didn't allocate or spend as much salary as we expected to in that fiscal year. Our expenses, it's the same situation with our expenses. There was, you know, lower utility expenses, lower maintenance expenses. There was no delivery for about 5 months, so we didn't pay for delivery. So our expenses were lower than what we had originally budgeted. So in FY 2021, which is our current fiscal year, you can see what a level funded expense line would be, as well as the salary line. In FY 22, which is the coming fiscal year, it looks like we have quite a bonanza here in an increase of, you know, almost $100,000. That is the result of a finance decision to move direct costs that are typically lined up with, I guess, the general fund, and move them into the library's budget, reflecting our proportion of those direct costs. So Ed Centeo came up with this idea to move those line items into the library budget so that it bumps up our bottom line appropriation for FY 2022. I'm not sure I can really explain it very well because I'm not a finance person, but that's why you're seeing such a difference from one year to another.
No, Jane, you've actually explained it pretty well. I mean, so what Ed's point was that there's certain costs associated with the operating the library, including personnel and expenses. So as a, for instance, maintenance costs, cleaning costs would be good examples. That when the town was putting that, say, for instance, in the public works budget, it wasn't really shown that X amount of dollars was being spent for the library. So as we're getting ready to get out of, if you will, this waiver status with the Massachusetts Library Commission, you know, it's fair to say that we were, you know, they would indicate that we were shorting some funds based on our population. But the reality is, if you do a better job actually accounting for the allocation of what the funds that get rolled into, to Jane's point, the general fund, and actually isolate them and identify that, you know, a certain amount of those dollars were actually spent in the libraries, it helps the overall bottom line to generate the fact that on a per person basis, the number that's proposed is more accurate in representing how much we're spending on library services than what we were doing before.
So in your budget books, if you look under general library, under section 4 community services, page 12, general library, you'll see a $40,790 addition of OPEB expenses that was not covered earlier. Also an $8,514 for general library custodial services, increased from previously, and then an $18,000 in insurance for property and casualty, which is increasing that section by $65,000, which is represented here in the expenses. And go ahead, George.
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I'm sorry. It popped up that you were trying to talk. So that's where the difference lies if you look at your book, and you'll see those changes. Jane, next.
So I'll go on. We're looking, well, I've kind of touched on these already, but the changes in the fiscal year that just ended and our current fiscal year has to do mostly with the reduced number of hours that we're open and well, I guess that's all that there is there, reduced hours. And then for salary and staffing, everything's always in flux when you have a lot of part-time employees. So at this time, we have entered into the interview stage of bringing in a couple more part-time library assistants. Again, one of our folks decided to leave and not come back for a while. Another one got a different job at in a different town and took that job. And that happened to another employee who decided to work in another town. So we have these openings that we're now interviewing for. And I just found out this morning that we have a really good candidate in line to come on as a part-time library assistant. And she has experience in Sandwich and she has experience in the Western Townsend as well. So that's really good. She has library experience. And then expenses, you know, things are flexible in the expense category during a pandemic. We've been moving a lot of our appropriations for materials away from print and into electronic because that's what people are able to access. So we've been buying a lot of e-materials. Some of our vendors have been working with us to provide some new ways of folks getting online to get their materials and ways of making those materials available. Actually, it's a long story about how book sellers and content sellers treat different organizations in terms of how they charge for materials. But suffice to say, in a pandemic, our vendors are working with us to provide some different options so that we're able to get more e-materials at a better cost. So we're happy about that. There's a lot of streaming content out there that folks are interested in, and we've got a couple different new vendors who are providing those services. We, as I mentioned, have had a little bit of reduction in our utilities expense due to the fact that we haven't been open. Well, yeah. And then because we are not having the public in the building right now in the wintertime, we are working on a maintenance and repair project in the South Yarmouth Library that's been in the works for years. So we're working on a plumbing repair downstairs and a little bit of a better setup for the children's room, kitchen, not kitchen area, but counter area and sink and plumbing and storage as well. So we have some maintenance and repair projects that we're working on while we're waiting for things to get back to normal, right? So the challenges at the library, as they always are, especially in a pandemic, is staying relevant, making sure that we have so many patrons who don't want to use the computer and don't want to place orders for their items online and don't want to read e-content, but just want a book in hand or a magazine or the daily newspaper or something. So we're trying to be all things to all people. Some folks only want to come to the library to use the public computers. So we're dealing with that concern because we haven't had access to our public computers since March 16th. So we're doing the best we can to help folks. We're able to do photocopying, faxing, and that kind of thing, and printing for people, which is, believe it or not, a big demand. If they can do wireless printing, we can accommodate them. If they can email us attachments, we can print them out for them and put them out with the curbside pickup for folks to pick up. So we're ever flexible, as I mentioned. The challenges with staff stress, anxiety, the need to learn new things, the need to stop doing things the old way and do things the new way, like we always have to do, is a challenge. The virtual programming platform is challenging versus in person. We have authors who don't really want to be videotaped and do their presentations to the internet or anything like that. We have been able to acquire some new equipment. We got a new GoPro camera, some new lighting, and some new accessories, including two extra external hard drives, so that we can store all these new videos that our Children's Youth Services Division is putting on. They're doing story times online, virtual. They're putting them up on YouTube. They're doing science experiments. They did their entire summer reading program virtually, but it takes a lot of tech and it takes a lot of storage space, as I'm sure you can imagine, and a lot of training. I guess I'll go to the next one. So, and then I have staff working remotely. As I said, I have 2 staff members who are working pretty much remotely. One of them is coming in 3 days a week, three half days a week, and working the rest of the time at home due to personal situation, trying to homeschool her children and doing all that sort of thing. But she's working off hours and she's very productive. So I have great faith in that. And our reference librarian is working remotely. And that's a personal choice. And I'm happy that the town is able to accommodate such requests in the time of a pandemic. So what we've learned this year is that our space limitations in each facility have been so brought to light in this time of social distancing and COVID restrictions. The layout of the library matters. I've always said that we need a couple extra bathrooms, but it's very plain and clear this year that the space limitations are very challenging. We need a tech savvy and creative staff, and fortunately we pretty much have that. So that's good. We just have to keep them. And then the communications and public relations during these trying times has been a big issue, because every day something changes and every day something's new, and it's hard to plan and then to change your plans and move ahead in a positive way. But that's what we've been doing. And I think we're getting through it. I'm ready for questions if anybody has questions.
Does anybody have questions for Jane?
Jane, this is George. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. This seems like a recurring question because Carl raised the same issue, but it seemed that services are under greater demand.
Yeah.
And I'm curious whether, you said you had more, visits or whatever. Do you think that's a permanent thing, or is that just because of COVID? People from Boston, let's say, that have second homes here in the Cape have offloaded the kids and the wife to live down here out of the greater threat of COVID, especially in the early months when we were not as challenged as we are now.
I know what you mean. I don't think, George, that it's something that's going to go back to being less, because we're always busy.
Okay.
Our summers are crazy. So this year, it was just a different crazy.
Well, when Carl was speaking, I had the same idea. If you had property on the Cape, or more likely you rented property on the Cape, because if you left the state, which you might have been doing in other years,
Yes, I can.
you'd be quarantined. But if you were staying within the state, not a problem. So I'm wondering if that is distorting our numbers, that's all.
I don't think so. I don't know for sure, but what we have seen is we have seen a lot of Yarmouth residents who are getting library cards who never had library cards before. And Yarmouth residents who are calling us, full-time residents who are calling us because they always used to go to the bookstore and buy their books. But now they realize that they need the library because they don't want to go to the bookstore and buy books. Things just kind of fall into place, I think. The staff is actually very pleased at how busy we have remained and how people haven't forgotten us and how appreciative they are that we're here. It's just a really good feeling.
Any other questions?
I'd just like to add on at the end, as I would have with Carl, that the staff has been challenged. Jane has been challenged to be creative and to deal with some high stress and interesting dynamics, as all the community services have been, but their job and their work has been exemplary, and they do so much with so little, and really have reached so many, and continue to expand and grow. She mentioned very quickly about meeting those levels required to keep our certification as a library. With the state, we had a 5-year plan of $15,000 a year being added into the budget for us to meet that base threshold to keep that certification. We're a little concerned now with the budget challenges that that might not be a priority. We might push it off again and push it off until we have the very last year where we have to increase to 45. So I ask you to remember that that's an important piece for the library group to keep building as we're on waivers so that they can retain their certification as they go forward, or they lose access to so many resource materials and clams and the like. That really wasn't brought forward, but I think it's an important piece for you to remember. If you're new to the committee, it's a piece you're not maybe aware of. Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
I have a question about, so, and it's not so much a question that needs to be answered, but just Ed, if you could just follow up by sending the committee some details about what was contained in the 100,000, kind of moving things around. And the one question I have is any of that new, or is it just the
Stephanie,
same?
can I interject here? Is Ed on this call right now?
He is
Yeah.
now, but Dan and
Oh,
I are
fine.
listening intently to this question. The 100,000 meaning what? The money to retain our certification?
No.
No, the difference between FY22 and FY21.
Yeah,
Ed's creative, moving things around from one line item into the library. I'm just curious to know what those figures are and to know if there
Those.
is.
no, Jane, that's not helpful, Jane, but thank you.
No, I know.
God, I think you'll find page 12 has 65,000 of that 100 is under tab 4, page 12, library services expenses. You'll find OPEB was added, casualty and life insurance was added. Some of the maintenance costs for cleaning and maintenance was added.
Workers' comp.
Workers' comp, insurance. So a lot were highlighted there. You'll see that there were a new number or an increased number in 22. And it brought it up to a $65,000 increase in expenses for this year in that line alone.
Okay, I do see the details in there. All right. And I am just curious a little bit, since we also have the director of the senior center. I'm just also curious. I know some folks want to just kind of continue with the straight, paper, but especially as we do have a lot of seniors who are high risk and maybe needing to acclimate to using things online and ordering things online, remote pickup and whatever else. I know you mentioned you had someone who was able to teach people, but I don't know to what extent that works remotely. And I was just curious to what extent the library and the senior center work together on helping seniors who might be isolated right now, and being able to learn how to use Zoom and how to, access books online and all sorts of things like that.
Stephanie, that's a great question. I actually worked for a few months with Diane doing the lunch distribution over at the senior center, and that was really fun because I got to see the library patrons as they came to pick up their lunches, and we got to connect that way. We even, made arrangements if they were looking for something to read and they needed, old used books or things like that. They didn't want to bother with their library transactions. Anyway, you should hear it at the library. My staff, the front desk staff, is on the phone all day, nonstop, walking people through how to get on the internet to our library website, how to get onto the CLAMS catalog, how to place their orders, and then, things like that. We're doing an awful lot of training, teletraining, I would call it. So, they're busy. They're busy on the phone all day long. All I can think of is that people are happy and they're calling all the time. Diane, did you want to say anything? Because you're muted.
She'll have her report when she comes at her time. She's got a lot of that with her.
Good.
Prepared.
Good.
Jane, could you just explain what you meant by the certification of, expenses that we have to incur so you can maintain your certification for clams, I think was the example given. What is that
Sure,
all about?
It's George, Mr. Perkins, it is certification with the
Which is
state.
good.
Let's see, 35 years ago, the state came up with a formula so that municipalities know that to meet certification requirements for their public library, they need to have a number of things in line. They need to have a certified library director if there's a population of, a degreed librarian if their population is over 10,000. They need to be open a certain number of hours per week, a certain number of evening hours per week. They need to have a certain size collection depending on the size of the community and things like that. But the appropriation requirement is called the MAR, the minimum appropriation requirement. And that formula is based on the last 3 years of appropriation averaged. And then you take that figure and you take the average of the last 3 appropriations and you multiply it by 2.5%. And that's your minimum appropriation each year. The town of Yarmouth has not met that minimum requirement since the Great Recession of 2008, 2009. So this is going on 11 or 12 years of waiver status. So I worked on a task force, actually, that was a statewide librarian task force with the commission. And we came up with a solution or an idea that the towns in Massachusetts who are in chronic waiver status would be given a 5-year time frame to get back up to their municipal appropriation. And we thought that 5 years was a good enough time frame to set as a goal for appropriations for your public library. And that went into effect with FY20, which was, no, FY19. So this would have been the 3rd year that we were in the 5-year plan going forward to get to our appropriation. So when we did the math, it was a difference of about 75 grand that under which the number was for our appropriation versus what our minimum was. So we divided that by 5. We came up with $15,000 a year, and give or take, a couple thousand, that was the amount that we were going to be increased each year until 2024, 2025, whenever we got up to where we're supposed to be.
So have we done that? And what are the consequences?
Well,
for
we're there now, given the new allocation that finance came up with. My concern is I'm not sure that the MBLC is going to accept those transfers of money.
Oh, you mean sort of moving stuff from one part of the budget to the other?
Sort of.
You better hope the local services doesn't have accountants.
I don't think she understands that.
Dan?
I think, George, Ed's looked at this pretty closely, and I think when you've got a situation like as a for instance, utilities, the 2 facilities have their own electrical meters. So there's a isolated expense that if you were just to bundle in the cost of electric utilities into the town's general bill, which is how the rest of the buildings get treated in town, it's not truly a fair, accurate indicator. Now, local services does have a similar style chargeback formula to give cities and towns credit for financing or underwriting what I'd call generally city considered or town considered expenses that were directly related to supporting a school district. So there is precedent for this. It's just we hadn't done it in the past before.
No, I'm all in favor of, doing the cost accounting correctly. Or more reflective of where we are. I'm just worried about if we're failing to meet a mandate by the state for this service.
Yeah.
We're trying to fake it,
So-
basically.
Yeah, so let's try this. And then if this were to fail, say, we can go back to the plan that we had before, where we were putting in, I think it was extra $15,000 a year into Jane's budget. But, interestingly, there's only so much without completely capsulating or capturing all your expenses, just adding that money, it gets kind of hard to find things to spend it on, believe it or not, you know? But in that case, if that ends up what's happened, then you just have to go to plan B. And hopefully by that time, COVID is over and local receipts return to normal, and it shouldn't be a huge issue for the town.
Okay, I'm just curious.
No, it's good question. Good point.
Mhm.
Do we have any further questions? All right, it looks like we're all set. Thank you, Jane. We appreciate it.
Thank you, everyone. I appreciate seeing everybody. Appreciate
Thanks,
your
Jen.
time.
Next up, we have Recreation. Amy Howell, is she in attendance? Oh, there she is. Hi, Amy.
Hi guys. My name is Amy Howell. I'm the rec director. So I'll go quick through our mission statement here. We strive to meet the needs of our residents and visitors by providing facilities, services, and activities that are representative of the best practices of our profession. Through affordable, comprehensive, and accessible offerings, we build our town brand, enrich people's lives, honor the legacy of our predecessors, and contribute to the total development of the individual and family while fostering a sense of community. We draw people here to contribute to our economy and to make Yarmouth strong. So just to recap, as everyone has stated, obviously this is not a normal year for us. And I would say one of the biggest highlights that we have is we were actually able to run our Flax Pond Summer Camp. It took a lot of work with the health department, with my staff, really to just make sure that we felt we could run it safely for the kids. We're probably one of very few on the Cape that actually ran this summer, and we were able to serve over 800 children this summer in 8 weeks at the camp. And luckily, we didn't have one COVID case from our kids or our staff. So a lot of that was due to the hard work of the staff, and a lot of it's luck. We know that as well. But I mean, our staff was amazing. The kids and families were amazing. You know, they're adaptable and they just wanted to be there. I think we got more thanks this summer than we ever have. You know, families just wanted their kids to kind of have a little bit of normalcy, and we were able to provide it. So we were very, very thankful and happy that we were able to do that. So,
Okay, Amy, I don't mean to interrupt you, but is your camera working? Is it something I did? Can we make your camera work? Oh, there you are. Thanks, Amy.
So along with camp, we were able to run other programs. So all of these, you know, anytime we were running a program, it wasn't just the normal, let's run a program. We have to look at what the guidelines are, what the restrictions are. And those were changing, I mean, weekly. You know, we'd get ready to run and then they would change. So, you know, it was hard, but we just really felt that it's our job. And B, we just really felt the community needed it. So along with camp, you know, over the summer, we were able to run sailing. Again, one of probably 2 or 3 that ran sailing this summer. Our sailing staff were amazing. You know, with the restrictions, they cut down all of the amount of people, obviously, because of social distancing. So with cutting down numbers, obviously it cuts down, you know, your budget immensely. And so it takes a lot of work to really work the numbers to make sure that obviously we are coming out on top on that. And again, so sailing went off all summer. We ran 6 weeks of sailing, which was great. Running, anything that we could run, we ran. And we ran until late December, even running basketball outside, you know, at Peter Homer Park up until the week before Christmas, to be able to give the community, the kids, something to do. And the families and parents just loved it. They were just, you know, as Jane was saying, is they're looking for something to do. And so, you know, being outside, I think people felt a lot safer. So, we had just had a lot of interest and we were able to run it. So we're really, grateful and thankful that we could offer that to the community. Our Halloween event, we started talking about this event back in the summer. We just kind of had a feeling Halloween wasn't going to be the same as the year was going. So, in partnership with the Chamber of Commerce, we offered a pretty large Halloween event. We ended up with over 600 kids at the Yarmouth Drive-In site, which was fantastic, very cheap, just to give them a safe alternative to trick-or-treating. We had a ton of volunteers that came and helped out, and it was a really great event. Again, just something we felt like the community needed, just to give the kids a little normalcy, and it went off with fantastic success. So that was great. So if you guys remember, this summer was very hot, little rain, which, was great for people that wanted to go to the beach. The beaches, as Carl said, the waterways, the beaches, they were extremely packed this summer. And working hand in hand with the Parks Department, and, with the town's policy, with what we did at the beaches, our staff, the beach directors and the lifeguards just were phenomenal this year. We had a rescue at Seagull Beach where 2 of our lifeguards pulled a victim out of the water. They administered CPR. They revived the victim, and the victim survived. They were recognized at a selectmen's meeting and by the fire department. So I can't say enough about all our staff, including the lifeguards and beach directors. It was a long, stressful year, and just all the staff did phenomenal. So for our overview, as you can see, not much of a difference into this year. The main difference in our salary line is that the community service director position has been removed from our salary line. So the only thing in our salary line would be our the rec director position and our lifeguards and our event coordinator position. So the only difference, again, would just be that community services director position being removed. The expenses, again, very little change. We've added, if you go to the next slide, you'll see, but the main difference is just the main difference would be the credit card fees and the expenses. Our credit card fees have been just increasingly gone up, as especially obviously a year like this where there's no in-person, as the office technically was closed to the public, so we didn't have anyone coming in, so it was all online. And we also do stuff through our system that we don't get we technically don't get the funds to cover those fees. So it'd be like cemetery purchases through our system, events through our system. And then with our fees being set for Flax Pond and sailing all the way up through FY23, we can't really adjust our fees accordingly. So we're just looking for a little help for our credit card fees. We typically are in the $10,000 to $13,000 range in our fees every year. So that's the only difference. I think we put 4,000 looking for that. Salary and staffing, again, as I touched in the previous slide, that's just the community services director position being removed, and then the minimum wage increasing every year, which you guys are going to see obviously until we hit that $15 mark in a couple years. That's going to go up every single year. So challenges facing us, I would say the biggest challenge for us would be our lack of staff. I am the only staff person minus our administrative assistant. There's only one other town on the Cape that is like that. Every other town either has an assistant rec director or a programmer. Competitive wages. Unfortunately, for the wages specifically for our beach staff, we continuously rank in the bottom 2 or 3 for where we start our salary ranges for lifeguards. That makes it makes it really hard for us to recruit qualified guards and supervisors. unfortunately, in this day and age, it's really easy for everyone to know what every other place is offering salary. So, that really does get kind of tossed around. Kids see it, they know it, they know what the other towns are offering. So it's been a challenge to recruit them when they know they can go one town over and make more money. So rising costs equals rising fees. With the minimum wage, as I touched on, every year the minimum wage goes up. That means our costs go up for the staff. And so that means to cover those costs, we have to raise the fees. And it's really just finding that balance of affordable programs and recovering those costs. And in years like this, that's extremely difficult. And so, again, we have to remain competitive with what we're paying our staff to retain them, to get the qualified staff. So that's going to just be a challenge kind of going forward. And without, another full-time staff in the office to be able to run programs themselves, it's just a big challenge. Offset versus revolving account. So we obviously have a offset account. So any money that we do have left over at the end of the year goes back to the town. But because of this, we can't roll over any revenue. If we could move to a revolving account, we'd be able to roll over our revenue to the next fiscal year. It would help out with obviously years like this where our revenue was severely impacted by the pandemic. We still have to, create enough funds. Our administrative assistant is out of our offset account. So we still have to, create enough revenue to pay for our admin assistant who really can't do anything to help us create revenue. If that's a programmer in that position, they can obviously do programs to help create the revenue, bring the revenue to cover their own salary. With an admin assistant in that position, there's nothing that they can do to help really offset that cost. If actually, we can just move to the next slide since I'm pretty much. So just continuing on that point, if we changed over to a revolving account, it would enable us to, obviously down years like this, but it would also enable us to kind of cover any surprise bills that would come, maintenance, repairs, replacements, which can just kind of come out of nowhere. It'll also allow us to subsidize programs to keep the cost low for a community. So, that kind of goes hand in hand. I mean, obviously everyone's hurting right now in the community, but we have to make so much money to cover costs. It's such a balance to be able to offer these affordable programs to the community, but also recover our costs plus some to cover everything. So it's just a challenge, and it's a challenge in a normal year, and obviously a year like this, it's even more of a challenge. And again, adding to that, so adding a full-time programmer would allow us to expand our offerings and keep our program fees low. So, with a programmer, we don't have to hire an outside source to run a program. So like our tennis, where we hire, a tennis professional and we have to pay them their fees. A programmer can run those type of programs, and all that revenue goes right into paying those costs. So moving our administrative assistant out of the offset into our tax base would obviously help us to be able to accomplish that. And then, just staying competitive, as I said before, with our beach salaries every year, and making sure that we just continue. It's unfortunate. That's the unfortunate consequence of raising the minimum wage, is it's gonna, it goes up. And so just hopefully making sure Yarmouth remains competitive, so we can get those qualified candidates and, ensure the safety, of the beach patrons. And that's it. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Amy? I have a question.
Oh, sorry.
I'll be brief. So the offset to revolving accounting, has that been discussed? Is there a reason why we wouldn't do that? And maybe that's a Dan question.
I would reserve that for Ed. We had a Department of Revenue audit of financial operations back in, I don't know what it was, like 2011. And it recommended, and the town did take a lot of those offset accounts and make them these like revenue generating type accounts. But for whatever reason, and maybe Pat would know, that one never made the cut, so.
I'm afraid that we were judged on the history of other communities where recreation directors maybe didn't have the oversight and utilized those funds inappropriately. In 2011, there were 2 incidents, one in Sandwich and one in Harwich, where the offset account was utilized for inappropriate expenses. And so, not the offset, the revolving account. So they liked the offset. So the difference in accounting really quickly is with an offset account, as Amy clearly explained it, on June 30th, any balance left within goes to the general fund, and you start July 1 with a zero-based balance in that budget. Now, we've been able to overcome that a little by putting future receipts. As of January, if you sign up for camp and your camp's going to be in August, then we're not going to put that money into the previous fiscal year. In the January, we put it into a future account. So on July 1, we have some operating funds to work with. But as Amy said, many years we're successful enough that we're looking at how to spend that extra money and trying to see what we need to purchase so that we don't turn it all back because we're starting at zero again. There's 2 other accounting, it's a revolving account. There's a 53E and a 53E and a half. With a 53E, you can reserve up to $10,000 of your additional revenues that aren't expended, and they don't have to be encumbered, and they're there as starting funds for the next year. With a 53E and a half, there is no cap to that revolving account, and many communities use it almost like a reserve for appropriation where it builds and builds, and then they can use those monies to do special projects or show a history enough of revenue that they could bring in a part-time or even a full-time person, programmer or whatever. The other thing I wanted to add, and Amy, very great job as always. This is Amy's first presentation. This is her first position as a recreation director here for the town of Yarmouth. She started with us a year ago, last June, as the assistant director, so well done. As Amy said, we have always paid the assistant director and the administrative director out of the offset. Offset only allows you to pay a salary, but you can't pay benefits or other costs. So 30% of that salary is matched in benefits that go into from the general fund. With these revolving accounts, I believe that there's a higher percentage that can be handled through the fee generation by that staffing. So it might actually save some money by changing that accounting, but Ed has to be comfortable with it. Ed has to convince the selectmen, should I say, to be comfortable. Ed isn't the final decision maker, the town administrator and the selectmen are, but it's rare to see offset accounts any longer in these types of departments where there's an expectation of a revenue generation to cover staffing costs. And most communities are going to this revolving fund, either a 53E or a 53E and a half. Did that answer?
Thank you.
Welcome.
Anybody else? Sarah?
Yeah, I had a quick question. This programmer role that you were talking about, that seems like it'd be on your wish list of things to have. When was the last time we had a programmer in the department, or have we ever had something like that?
Pat, this is going to be a Pat answer just because we haven't had it since I've been here, which is not very long. So I can't speak to that one. Pat, when's the last time you had 2 staff? You're on mute.
Good, because I was being fresh, saying, oh, sure, now you need me. So the last time we had a program supervisor was back in 2008. And we went from that supervisor to an assistant director position. But when Amy came in June of 2019, she was, she was the assistant director. And then when I was promoted and Amy was promoted, there was no second staff that was filled in between. So she's been alone for 2 years.
So were you, I'm just to clarify, were you kind of talking about turning the admin assistant position into a programmer position, or is it ideally what you'd want as an additional job?
Yeah, so ideally, wish list, right? Ideally, move our admin assistant out of the offset into the tax base and have a programmer. And a programmer would be coming out of the revolving, which is pretty much what it's, as Pat said, most towns, rec departments now do operate with a revolving account. And it's very, very common for the programmer to be coming out of the revolving account. And again, that's because their job is pretty much is creating that, revenue through programs to pay their salary. And so, you can make that justification is that they can add to that revenue by creating programs, running programs. An admin assistant, and ours is fantastic, but through their job description, there's nothing that they can do to bring in revenue into the department. So they can't really help offset their cost where a programmer can.
Okay, thank you.
And that's about a $42,000 to $55,000 a year position. So starting at, it would be a grade 8 to a grade 9 as a programmer, and that would be the range within our setup with the town. So we're not looking at an exceptional amount of money.
But ideally, what I hear you saying is that that person would be very, very motivated to get people signed up for programs so that their position would be funded. And if that didn't happen, then there's a chance that position would be on the cutting block.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Anybody have any questions for Amy? All right. Amy, thank you so much. We appreciate your time.
Guys, have a great
Great
one.
job, Amy. Thank you.
Next, we have golf. So Scott Gilmore, I know he is on the call now. Scott, if you want to introduce yourself and start your presentation, that'd be great.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. I'm Scott Gilmore, Director of Golf for the town of Yarmouth. I'll go through the mission statement pretty quick. It's the goal of the management and the staff of the town of Yarmouth Golf Division to provide the finest golf facilities and the utmost service to resident and non-resident patrons of Bayberry Hills and Bass River golf courses. We will seek this objective while making every attempt to maintain the Yarmouth golf facilities as a self-funding operation within the town. A couple of the big things that happened in 2020 was we were forced into a mandatory shutdown that lasted about 50 days. In early spring, I believe we got to go ahead around May 8th to open back up. Once we did open, we saw record rounds come through, very busy golf courses all year long, still very busy. I think 60 people played over at Bass River today in the nice cold weather we're having. So it's
Scott, I don't mean to interrupt, but Pat, do we have a presentation that we can put on the screen? You're on mute.
I apologize, sir. I'm working on it.
Okay, that's great. Carry on.
So we had a very, very busy year, very, very good year for golf, and it's still continuing, looks to continue for 2021 in COVID. I don't think anyone knew what to expect coming out of it, but golf saw a tremendous boom out of it, and good for us. A couple of key highlights: we brought in a new cart fleet. Pat can attest to how bad our old carts work. We got nice brand new ones now to help out around the courses. We also brought in new equipment fleet. We had a pretty aging fleet that was costing a lot of money to maintain. Now we can keep our equipment supplies number really down and really in check and keep up better conditions to the course. We continue to make improvements to both courses every year through minor changes, nothing crazy renovation wise, just minor changes to holes, such as maybe a tee being built or moving of rough to fairway, fairway to rough, brush clearing, tree removal, those type of things. We did a pretty significant fairway expansion to Bass River this spring before we fired back up. That's helped out greatly with the pace of play over at Bass River. That was a big success there. And then we are currently in the final steps of implementing a new POS system that we went with Club Profit. Chelsea is not we're not a big fan of Chelsea. It's just a lot of problems. Hopefully this new one will make life a lot easier for us. Do I keep going, Pat, at this
Yeah.
point?
I've got you on my screen. I'm just trying to get you on your screen. So my apologies. I'm getting there.
Okay, no worries. So the biggest changes, and so in FY20, we saw significant savings due to the closure. So being closed for 50 days, we didn't have anything open. So we got to save on salary and expenses, especially not running the restaurant was a big savior to not provide the service in the spring where there isn't a ton of business at that time. But budget wise for 2021, we're on track, if not below on both sides. And then similar requests to what we put in for 2021 to 22. Changes in the budget, salary, staffing, it's not really too much of a change. It's just currently we have 9 full-time. We're trying to get up to the 15 mark to be properly staffed up.
So you're not seeing that.
So a couple of other big changes that you might notice in the budget is the cart lease went up a little bit. That's just due to the new carts. We had previously 9-year-old carts now. And this year, the brand new equipment lease is new. That used to be in capital. It's not. It's a new thing. And to bring the point on with such as Amy said and Jane, credit card expenses are really high as as we went credit card only due to COVID and certain things, but it's also a good thing as well because it brings in, it means our business is doing well too. Expenses are increasing by about 55,000. That's due to debt, a little bit debt increase as we're paying the Bayberry renovation, chemicals, fertilizer, fuel, all those are continuing to go up every year. Challenges we see our staffing levels, just to keep bringing that point home with everybody. I think everybody's experiencing the same thing. It's hard to bring in staff, especially in the COVID world. Keeping up with capital needs for the golf courses. Our buildings are really aging. We just did get approved for the roof, which is a big help at Bayberry. We do need to do the siding and the windows as well. Restaurant operations is a big drain on us, spreads us pretty thin, and we did go out for an RFP on that, and we have potential vendors to operate the restaurant, which will be a huge burden off our shoulders once that's out to a different person and not us. And then the future of Bass River Golf Course in the DHY agreement is a big challenge at this point to see what that brings. Recommendation, I touched on this a little bit, is we need to invest into the clubhouse at Bayberry, shingles, windows, doors, that type of thing. There hasn't been anything done to the building since it was built in, I think, 84 or 85. The cart barn, similar, needs the same type of thing. Plus, we're looking into extension for proper storage of the new carts. They're a little bit bigger than the old ones. And then there's the links course that is going to need some investment in the near future as that's starting to age out in irrigation and bunker improvements. And then we're going to continue to work closely with the GC, other towns, other departments in town to ensure we're successful. And that's pretty much all I got. And any questions?
Thanks, Scott. Anybody have any questions?
Scott, George Perkins, could you give me a sense of why you think you've done so well this year, and should we expect that to carry over to the next year? I notice you've got revenues up in both greens fees on both courses and in the future. And what supports that?
Yeah, we saw a tremendous boom in 2020. It will be probably very similar into 2021, as there's a lot of restrictions on a lot of operations, a lot of businesses out there, especially businesses are inside, we are outside, and provide easily social distance and activities for people to do. Golf was a big thing that really hit this year, and we expect a similar in 2021 with COVID still around. Probably in 2022 we'll take a dip back down to more of a normal level, but that's what we're expecting.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought I heard that we are the only muni on the Cape in which non-residents were allowed to play.
That's in, as soon as we got clearance to open back up, we went that route. Most of I believe all the other courses stayed member only or resident only at that point. We were open to everybody once we fired back up.
Well, what I'm suggesting is, if the others start letting non-residents play, can you expect to maintain the same usage, same number of players as you had this year?
Yeah, because that only lasted a few weeks that they did that. They opened back up.
It was a whole year. Okay. All right.
Yeah, they opened back to everybody within probably about a month. We just did it right off the bat and didn't hurt to do it to the members.
Any other questions?
I have a couple.
Go, Stephanie.
So great to see the revenues and the expenses even out. There were a couple things. So I saw there was a transfer out of $100,000. Tell me what that's about.
It's a capital project transfer under your equipment maintenance lines. Just ask your equipment maintenance transfer of $100,000 in 2021, and there's zero in 2022 budgeted.
Yeah, I believe that's for the and Dan or yourself can correct me, Ryan. I believe that's for the 50,000 for the roof and 50,000 for the dump truck.
That's correct. It's the capital. That's right.
So that was one time. All right. And you
That's correct.
Thank you, Dan. And you mentioned that you got a new point of sale, or you're getting a new one, because I see a request in for 36,000 for one.
Yeah, we have one currently that we're uploading now and should have it into the live at the end of the month. We just don't pay for it until March is when we pay for it every year. So we do have the request in there for it, but we actually went for an RFP and selected a vendor and are uploading it now.
So you get the product brought in and uploaded, and then you pay for the license every March, and the annual license fee is $36,000.
Yeah, it's an annual payment. We pay them one time a year for it.
Okay, so you got it for the first time and you haven't paid the annual fee on it yet.
We don't pay anything until it's fully loaded up, and then we're happy with it. Then we go through a payment.
All right, so we should expect to see this every year.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You also have 40-odd thousand in additional credit card expenses, which you referenced. Are you adjusting? Are you like marking up prices at all to address that? How are you compensating for that?
Yeah, so we build the credit card expense into the margins of everything we sell. So the pro shop merchandise, greens fees, we build the margin in there to cover the cost of that.
Okay.
What you saw was we were a lot higher this year because we did credit card only. Hopefully, as we move through COVID in stages, we can go back to more of a normal situation where we accept cash again. So that's why it's so high right now.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I think I had another question, but it's escaping me at the moment. So I'll pass it along. See if someone else wants to ask.
Anybody else have any questions?
I would like to just say for Scott's benefit that they, I believe there are presently 3 positions that are going before the Personnel Board, 3 full-time positions with new updated job descriptions that will be approved by the Personnel Board in February and will then go out for hiring. They are included here in the budget. And so we hope to have him better staffed as we open up this spring season for the 2021 year.
I found my question.
Should have been
Under under fees, golf non-residents, it's zeroed out. Can you explain that?
Give us a page, Stephanie.
23.
That's. I'm sorry. Fees, no, that's under the revenue, right?
That's
Mhm.
revenues for, it looks to be under Bayberry. Oh, that's other miscellaneous. What line is that under again, Stephanie?
It's in the 699 category and it's
Yep.
432290.
It's your second line.
Yeah, so it's just a way of, well, we can probably update it. It's a way for us to check because we don't have a non-resident resident anymore. It's just a way for us to track internally of how many non-resident membership money we're accepting as opposed to resident. But we can definitely change it once we receive the numbers.
Do you have different rates, right?
No, it's one flat fee for everyone now.
Oh, that's
We
right.
don't charge Yarmouth different than a non-resident. We
That's
charge
why
one
everyone
rate.
is coming here too.
And why
We-
do we do that?
Being an enterprise fund, we thought that it was better for us to not do that. We'd rather open it up to everyone, and to us, it doesn't really matter if you're from a different town or not. If you want to be a member for us, we like that. And a $50 difference or whatnot with other towns who are more doesn't really help us in that scenario.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, so essentially you're a business, right? So I totally understand the argument that you have to be competitive in order to bring in, customers. And I don't golf, so I don't know what the quality of the golf courses are and the amenities compared with other towns or other, private facilities that might make that decision. And what the, what's the word I'm looking for? The flexibility on the part of the consumer coming from the other part of town, from another town in terms of making that decision. I wouldn't think it would be $50 or, whatever would be a huge amount of a difference. And I am curious to know, though, what other towns do. And, again, I wouldn't suggest that we be exactly the same as everyone else, because then you give up your kind of, what's of value to, in terms of attracting new customers. But I do wonder if there isn't some value in charging at least something.
So if I might just real quick, I think it's important to appreciate the amount of energy and effort that has gone on to study and examine golf operations the last couple of years with 2 national brand consultants. And the decision behind the universal rate was, I think, and I don't have the exact era in mind, but somewhere between like 10 and 12 years ago, the membership raw number was significantly higher, maybe by like 1,200 full members than where it's at today. And if you're going to continue to operate a municipal club like we do, and you want to be able to strike a balance with the daily fee payers, which we now know pay the lion's share of the expenses on the course, you still need to have a robust membership, number of members. And so a couple things that were identified was from the consultants was that the Cape will continue to be an area that will have a significant amount of people to pick from, if you will. They use the analogy of fishing in a barrel. The problem became our own individual demographic was declining significantly in memberships. There wasn't really a good feeder program to capture younger golfers to bring them into this lifelong golf game scenario. So a lot of different decisions and things were discussed as to how to raise the actual raw number of members. And one of the ideas that came to the top was, well, why don't you just dispense with the penalty charge, if you will, for lack of a better phrase, for people coming over from other towns. If you're trying to get more members, let's just make it a flat rate. And it'd be interesting to see, maybe Scott has those raw numbers as to how many out of town golfers decided to sign up. I mean, this is kind of an odd, like much like with housing prices, I wouldn't want to use 2019 or excuse me, 2020 as a year to benchmark anything in performance because of COVID. But, you know, I think there was some, I mean, these are national brand consultants that look at this kind of stuff across the world, not just, you know, our little world here. And the point they continuously made was, you know, within 20 miles or 15 miles, the raw number of golf course options that are available to golfers is huge. So why would you want to discourage anybody if you're losing members at a pretty good clip? Why would you want to discourage or make an obstacle from allowing people to become members? Their money is as green as our money type of idea. So, but I would encourage you as I get ready to leave the town, one of the things that I feel really good about, and this was Scott and I and Pat had dialogued a lot about this, is it's incredibly important to appreciate the amount of energy and effort that was put into understanding the golf dynamic that we have presently in front of us. Pre-COVID, for sure. And please don't lose sight of what these consultants have told us. They've left us with considerable plans. We still continue to have a legacy contract with one of them for advice. But it would be very easy to slip back into the bad habits of yesteryear and nosedive this operation again, when right now we have an opportunity, particularly with this upcoming year, to really stride forward and put golf on a much better footing, especially with the Bass River construction coming up in the future. That's kind of like the X factor, wild card in this. But, you know, going forward, if you have not read those consultant examinations of our operation, please do, because golf is, as I've come to know here in town, is a beloved institution for a small percentage of taxpayers. And the last thing in the world that the rest of the taxpayers want to hear about is the golf operation coming back to town meeting asking for some money on a regular basis. And a lot of work was put into understanding it. The blueprint is there for everybody to read. So that would be my cautionary tale. The blueprint for success, if you will, by the way, is there for everybody to read. So please don't forget those words of advice.
Why don't you send along those reports as a new member? I haven't seen them yet.
Pat would be glad to do that.
I'd be happy to do that, both from JJ Keegan and also for the National Golf Foundation. I'd be happy to send you both.
But I agree. If you have, recommendations, you should stick with them, but you should also measure them. So I would like to see the metrics of how many new non-residents you've added over since those recommendations were put into place. And
Yeah,
I
well-
understand the lens that you're saying of don't take FY, this 2020 as being gospel.
Well-
I get that, but I want to see those numbers.
Yeah, and actually, what I asked Scott to also provide for you too is specifically highlighting, there was a conversation last night at the golf hearing on the fee increase relative to reinstalling what's referred to as the punch card. The punch card concept, which discounts your daily rate for some number of rounds, like in the example that was given last night, a 5-round punch card is roughly equates to $75 a round. That is a very attractive, if I will, offering if your goal is to provide cost-effective golf. It's not a really good business sense to do that. All you're doing is undercutting your daily rate. And believe it or not, when I tell you $20 a round makes a difference. And what was one of the problems of the last, management entity that was, at Yarmouth Golf was there was over-reliance, I think, on a large degree. The punch card and some of these other gimmicks, they were undercutting the value of the daily fee and what that meant. Once we understood exactly how much the daily fee means to the bottom line of the operation, it became quite apparent. You have to be extremely careful with ideas, gimmicks, or promotions that undercut that. So I'm not a fan of going back in time and making that same mistake again. But in order to avoid that, people need to appreciate and understand the work that went into coming up with this blueprint for success in the future. And one of them, and I'm not a big fan of this one either, but the National Golf Foundation people also indicated you need to calibrate your rate structure at least every couple of years to bring it consistent with the cost of inflation. Now, I don't think they recommended an annual increase, but certainly Scott's in front of the board now on a 5% increase. I know that's hard to stomach, and it'd be really tempting to take a break from doing stuff like that. But there's an old saying, the worst time in the world to give a break is when there's a national calamity going on, because actually, based on what Scott's demonstrated, he's got an opportunity now to really cement the financial standing for a period of time. So it's a tough dynamic. By no means would I ever think that you can turn your head away from golf and, it's on autopilot. It's certainly something that the town and with Scott, they need to make sure that they're that in tune with Main Street golf habits. Otherwise, it could nosedive quickly. There's no question. We have an expensive cost structure in labor that cannot be understated. That's the single biggest liability with Yarmouth Golf right now, is having municipal labor, which is very costly, continues to be a driving liability to the town. There's no question. If you're looking at it from a cost perspective, and I want to be careful with that, I value the employees and their contribution to the town, but clearly things like defined benefits, pensions, the benefits we offer make the labor component to running a municipal golf operation much more costly than on the private side.
I'd like to add, just in context, as someone who uses the golf course, I've played in other states. When I was teaching in Maine, I used to play in golf courses there, and I don't know what just happened. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
Yep,
fine,
yep.
George. You're fine.
Right. And I lived in Wisconsin, where in the Milwaukee area, the Milwaukee County park system is unbelievable, especially in terms of the number of golf courses they have. And when I think of what I'm paying per year for what I'm getting, the consultant said something in the order of $22,000 a year, $22,200 a year is what we should be paying. And we're not even, we just broke 1,000 last year.
Yeah.
So, this
Lost
is
tape, $3,000. You're right. Absolutely, George. You hit the nail on the head right there.
Right.
And, but, if you're there, everybody expects you to stay there. And unfortunately, every other community on the Cape, our competition, plays the game the same way. And they fund the costs differently. We fund it all through user fees, and they are willing to fund theirs in part, whether it's capital or some other subsidy. So it makes their operation look better than ours. But if you play golf and look at the two courses we have in town, I see them as a jewel. I'd be very upset if you ever got rid of golf.
The cost per round for a member is, I want to say it was something like $22 a round it equated to. I mean, the value here, George, is top notch, no question.
Oh, and I'm one of these terrible people that drive that cost down close to zero every year.
Okay.
So do we have any further questions? All right, hearing none. Scott, thank you very much. We appreciate your time.
And Scott,
Thank
would you follow up with Stephanie in those reports, please? Because I won't be in tomorrow. So could you get those to her tomorrow?
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
All right, last but not least, we have Diane Kane with Senior Services. Diane, take it away, please.
You saved the best for last.
Absolutely.
Hi, Mr. Chairman and members of the Finance Committee. I'm Diane Kane, Director of Senior Services. Happy New Year. The Senior Services mission statement is the mission of the Town of Yarmouth's Division of Senior Services is to foster an age-friendly community that enhances the quality of life for the town's older adults 60 and above and their families by providing programs and services in in a supportive and accessible environment that contributes to vital aging through mental, physical, and financial wellness.
Come on. There we are.
Key points throughout the year include we have been closed to the public since March. However, we are still fully operational, providing services, and we had been providing some programs outdoors through, I'd say, mid-November. We have made over 84,000 touch points throughout the year. This means that through programming and services, phone calls, and transportation, we have handed out over 12,000 meals and food items. This was mostly through our Grab and Go program, the lunch program, which many thanks to Jane from the library and Amy from Rec. They had helped me out tremendously by serving lunches daily through April through August. So we have made over 20,000 phone calls. We have provided over 1,000 services, tax exemption, fuel assistance, medical equipment, SNAP. We have created and organized a program to ease loneliness due to the pandemic called Yarmouth Connects. Yarmouth Connects is a community project making residents aware of social isolation and loneliness among residents, especially our older residents during the COVID-19 pandemic. We ask people to go out of their way for the months of January, February, and March, when feelings of loneliness are expected to peak. This could mean a friendly wave, calling a friend or neighbor out of the blue, writing a card or letter to someone, or as simple as a warm smile. All things can be done while safely socially distancing, and we find that these simple acts of kindness can have a huge impact on many of our older residents' lives. We have organized and distributed 362 masks early on during the pandemic when masks were hard to come by. That was in conjunction with the Board of Health. We were able to get 296 tax appointments completed through the help of AARP tax advisors during COVID. We had completed 450 before we had to close our doors. Our part-time workers have been furloughed. We have canceled all volunteers and suspended tax work-off employees until further notice. So all this work has been done entirely by staff. We do have a new color milestones newsletter, which debuted earlier this year. And we have our web pages up and running. For budget, for 2021, I think that we're going to be clearly under budget due to the cuts in programs, certain programs being canceled. For 2022, we have a proposed budget of 418,000. The only difference really would be the part-time salaries, which have come out of the 2021 budget. And also we are hoping to hire an administrative assistant come July. And our expenses remain the same. So we're level funding all that. Changes in our budget would be the placeholder for the administrative assistant position. And we cut our curb hours for the van by 50,000. And there is no increase to expenses. Challenges facing senior services, all things put into perspective due to the pandemic. Food insecurity for seniors who can't afford it or go out to a store. We're extremely grateful for our Grab and Go lunch program, the providers, for CDBG grant funding through community development and donations from the community. The Mass Military Foundation was providing military veteran boxes, Dunkin' Donuts for Station Ave for providing coffee and donuts. The Catania family, Catania group, and we had a chef from the senior center, and they have been providing soups weekly. Faith Family Kitchen and Family Table Collaborative. Loneliness and isolation are for older residents. We can check in on them by reestablishing a reassurance phone call list. We've created Yarmouth Connects project. There's been a challenging of reopening, concerns from the seniors because they're worried that some really want to get back and into the swing of things, and others are truly concerned. Loss of rental income due to the pandemic, loss of our beloved fitness instructor due to the pandemic, part-time staff furloughed due to the pandemic, and loss of elder services, part-time afternoon custodial staff. Recommendations for addressing future challenges. For food insecurity, we have the CDBG grant funding. We received $15,000 in the springtime, and we just got approved for $35,000 with the help of Karen Green and Mary Wagon of Community Development. And we're going to continue with our community partnerships. Isolation and loneliness is, we're going to continue to build relationships through our reassurance calls and calling the community to help out with outreach, as I demonstrated in Yarmouth Connects. Reopening plans would be to start slow and build trust back up again. And we have been very fortunate for the Elder Affairs grant, which remained at $106,000 this year. And that's it. Questions?
Do we have any questions? Come on, there's got to be one out there.
You know, I have to say that Diane quietly has kept things going. That administrative assistant position was actually Diane's position, and she was brought out and hired a while back, and she felt that she could do both jobs, and she's been carrying both jobs. And if you go back and look at those numbers that she presented of the touch points within town, the contact with our seniors, we really do have a real blessing with her and the staff that are in-house working, that our seniors are not alone. And she's building stronger and more diverse partnerships monthly as COVID continues, that I think will draw great benefits for our community for many, many years to come. I think the driving program is important, the vans that we invested in over time. I think it's important that we try to get those back on the road as soon as COVID can allow that to happen. We were really providing a service to get people to the doctors and to the grocery store, and almost unheard of that we could do the work we were doing with the vans that we had, and for a community our size. So the state, of course, gives a grant every year to the senior services that they utilize and have a lot of flexibility with. But Diane continues to work underneath those levels and continues to grow this program. And my question would be, you know, what's next, Diane? What do you see coming when, you know, in the next year, as you look at this budget and you open up? Do you see programming back to where it was, or do you see programming on a whole new scale?
I really kind of see it starting off slow. I would hope that, well, I don't hope for, but I do see it as a rebuilding year, sort of speak, just because we're going to have to rebuild our transportation department back up again. We're going to have to rebuild programs that have been left vacant for so long. So we're going to have to rebuild everything.
And as all this has been going on, Meals on Wheels has still been in the back of the senior center, using our commercial kitchen and providing meals 5 days a week to all of our citizens through that Elder Services Meals on Wheels program. So again, it hasn't been quiet over there at all. No.
So senior services have any potential role in the distribution of the vaccine?
That hasn't been determined yet from Bruce Murphy, that Bruce Murphy's handling all that. So it hasn't.
Your facility and its large parking lot suggests that it could be.
Yep.
Absolutely. Go ahead, Diane.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Bruce will be looking into all that. So once it starts rolling out, which is within the next couple of weeks, Bruce will be looking into that.
I have a rather pedestrian question. Just looking through the part-time staff, looks like you have a part-time groundskeeper or something like that. Is that person shared with another department or just a part-time employee of your department?
We have a part-time maintenance man, part-time maintenance custodial staff. He's solely 20 hours and he's solely for the senior services.
Okay, thank you.
We have a lot of 20-hour or less a week employees. That keeps the employee under the benefits provision. You hit 20 or more, you'd have to benefit them, so.
I believe
Diane
that's
does a
all
great
I have.
job. She very quietly and what I would say capably has gone about, I guess, transitioning the senior center from this buzz of activity under normal circumstances, which put a lot of smiles on people's faces, to this needed outlet for resources for our most vulnerable population. I can't say thank you enough to Diane for such a great job under such difficult circumstances. So thank you.
I have to say, I'm pretty proud of all these guys, Brian. These are my peers, those that I work with and support. And I wanted to be here tonight so that I could make sure that you all hear just how wonderful they are and how hardworking they are. And I'm sure Jeff would tell you that of his DPW staff, and Frank of all of his public safety guys. But these are truly unsung heroes going above and beyond to make sure our community is served and they know and have their finger on the pulse of what's happening in Yarmouth. Thank you, Diane, for all you do.
All right. Thanks, Diane. I appreciate it. We appreciate it. Well, we're moving on to some new business. Does anybody, Dan, do we have any new business?
I don't have anything for you.
I love when you say that.
I do have one question. And
Go ahead.
again, I'm sorry. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's a tab 5 in your book that says Community Services Management. And there's a sole single line of that, which is me. And you'll see that salary under Community Services Management. It's not assigned a general fund code. And my salary previously was, of course, within the Recreation Department, so that but once my job description was changed and Amy was hired as the Director of Recreation, it somewhat skewed the amount of tax dollars that were in support of the department. So even though I'm not looking for an answer tonight, I want to make you aware that it's kind of sitting there out. No one ever wants their salary as the only item in a line in the town to go to town meeting, number one. And Dan and Ed are trying to kind of find out, where the best place will be to fit this. But it certainly needs some kind of attention by the committee to decide how we're going to handle it as we go forward.
Dan, do you have
just
any guidance on that?
Well, Pat raises a good question or a good issue. Just so everybody knows, when the job of community service director was originally created, there was a provision within it that had what I would call the management of the recreation department associated with that. So that's under the guise in which it's operated. So at that time, even though it was for all those different departments, its principal role was still director of recreation. So rather recently, I think it was started in the late spring or early summer, the union brought to our attention that there would be an issue associated with having non-union personnel do union work, if you will. And the director of recreation is a union position. That being said, that caused us to re-examine the situation. We had to go back to personnel board. We had to address that provision as part of that brokered agreement with the union. We elevated Amy Howell's job, who Amy had done a fabulous job and we wouldn't want to lose her anyways. I recommended her for promotion just maybe a couple months ago. And the Board of Selectmen deferred any action on that. So by not doing that, they agreed. And so that's how come we're here today. So as we were building the budget, it was like, well, geez, what do we do with the director's position? And until that evolves, in order to be able to demonstrate it on paper for an appropriation, it's where it is, where Pat explained it to you tonight. So
if Dan's saying he doesn't have a recommendation, on any of the other department heads are in somewhat of a more generic budget setup where they're within a line item with numerous other salaries. And as this one's sticking out all by itself, until a permanent home could be found, I wonder if it might be considered to be absorbed into the administrative piece or somewhere else, because we also thought about breaking up the salary between the 5 divisions within the department, but then again, it skews the actual tax-based dollars in those budgets, and it makes it look like they're all bumping up their budgets by $25,000, and then that doesn't bode well as we look at those changes on town meeting floor. So that wasn't considered a very good option either.
So the short answer is I don't have a good answer for you on how to do that right now tonight.
Why don't you just put it in the town administrator's line item?
Well, because then I'd be asked the same question at town meeting. Well, I won't be at town meeting this year, so. But the next town administrator would, as it relates to, because then it opens up the box of, but if that person doesn't do anything for administration, it doesn't oversee or operate within administration, that might not necessarily be an appropriate location for it either. So I'll talk it over with Bob Lawton, who's coming on board. I got a transition meeting with him tomorrow, bring him up to speed on these things. And I'm sure between Bob and my full-time replacement, that'll all get figured out by the time it goes to a print. So goes to warrant print.
Thank you. I hope you don't mind, but I thought it was important to bring to your attention.
Yeah, Pat, that's fine. So we'll wait for Dan and Bob to come to a decision on that.
Yeah.
So
Right.
under the heading of new
I'm
business,
sorry, no, Stephanie.
yeah, under the heading of new business. So just point of inquiry, Dan. So Bob's coming in, and that's going to be when. Tell us again when that's going to be.
So I think the contract has him starting maybe the 13th because he will clock some time with me tomorrow. We have our first transition planning meeting. So I'm going to presume that Bob will probably be available also for the TA interview program that's scheduled for Saturday. And then he'll probably be available for Tuesday night's meeting if they have one. And then I'll probably have 2 more transitional meetings with him. So he's on the clock essentially now, starting tomorrow, I believe. So, he's not like he's just coming in out of the cold. He and I have a good relationship. We speak on a lot of different topics. We meet monthly on the Affordable Housing Trust. So we've got all the departments gave us transitional issues to prepare for Bob. So we've been through this before as recently as 4 years ago. So I feel pretty good that you won't miss a beat. It'll be his level of effort. It'll be at least 2 days a week after I leave. So
another question is, as it relates to the interviews for your successor. I understand that's happening on Saturday. Is there any process for other boards and committees to weigh in on that decision with the Board of Selectmen, or is that exclusively in their wheelhouse?
Well, it's exclusively their decision, and there's a conversation going on amongst them. They had it last night as it relates that there should be, there's some of them wanted a recommendation that you don't take a vote till Tuesday. They wanted to give some time for those interviews to air, people to take that in, get some commentary either by email or by phone call, make it, and then come back together and make a decision on Tuesday. Some other members of the board said, well, why don't we be prepared to make the appointment on Saturday? So I think if I remember correctly, when I interviewed for the job, they made it that day of the interviews, but there's something to be said for allowing a few days to go by. And other towns recently have done that as well. They've had the interviews and then the next regularly scheduled business meeting, they make the appointment. So I think your point's well taken, and perhaps Stephanie or any other members of the committee that feel such that way, that, you know, if you sent your feelings to the selectman email address, that would probably, you know, be beneficial for the decision making to occur.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I am curious to watch what happens on Saturday. And it would be nice to have some ability to ask some questions of the candidates, but
Well, if that's the case too, you know, you can always, you know, send the questions to the selectmen as it relates. I mean, we are generating a series of pre-used, if you will, questions from past rounds of interviews, but certainly if there's something that you want to see attended to, if you sent that along to them, well, you know, it's up to them to work that into the questioning. I mean, they'll,
I'd need to see their resumes in order to be able to formulate.
well,
all
those are out publicly now,
They
so
are
we
out
can
publicly.
certainly send those to the committee. Yeah.
That would be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a little disappointed to see that there wasn't a single non-white male qualified candidate to make it to that final round, but that's just me personally.
Stephanie, there is a public comment, email public comment at yarmouth.ma.us that we're accepting individual questions, and those don't just go to the whole group of selectmen. They can be directed to a specific one if you choose.
Yeah.
And I will send you those resumes before the meeting's over.
Yeah, if you could send them to everybody, Pat, that'd
I
be great.
will, absolutely.
And then the other question that I just have is a process question for us, Dan. So I understand that we need to make our recommendations to the Board of Selectmen in February. Just
Yeah.
a quick clarification, is that on the budget or also on all the warrant articles?
No, that's the budget. So the way I envisioned it when we put the map of the year together was that pretty much all of the budget presentations for the departments will be done to you, you know, be presented to you by that first week or thereabouts in February. You'll have an opportunity some time to discuss any recommendations to put forward to the board. And by the 28th of February, you are required to give those recommendations to the board. Subsequent to that, there's a public hearing that needs to be done before you go to town meeting, where the capital budget plan for the town and the town's general budget is proposed. And it's up to the town administrator to put that public hearing forward. So you just have to make your budgetary recommendations known to the board by that date in February. Time for recommendations on warrant articles can be done pretty much from the time the warrant is set, which will be, the placeholders will be set for January 26th at the Board of Selectmen's meeting, and then we'll work on the wording of the different questions through February. But you can, you know, start deciding how you're going to do recommendations on that probably in March. I would say that I've recommended to the board, and I'll talk to Bob Lawton about this. We've delayed now a number of articles on 2 successive town meetings, and we're getting to the point where I'm thinking that we probably need to try to put together as much of a full warrant as possible. That being said, we're not going to be out of this COVID situation for sure by April 28th or thereabouts, when the town meeting would be. So I've talked to the board and also given some instruction to Pat that we need to prepare for an outdoor town meeting sometime maybe in May to address that, because I think it is important, A, that you provide the safest possible meeting location for the maximum number of people. And I think the only way you can do that is going to be outdoors. And B, I don't think you can do 3 consecutive meetings in a row where you're cutting the warrant down.
Yeah,
Things have to get attended to, you know.
I agree on that. And that was actually part of why I raised the issue. The other, just a quick follow-up. So as far as our recommendations on the budget, is there an expectation that we are to provide that in a meeting of the Board of Selectmen, or just it's a paper?
Yeah, no, you generally join, you meet with the board on, in that last meeting in February.
Okay, so my question to the rest of the committee is, with COVID, You know, I've heard from several members that there is a sense of, you know, discomfort about going to in-person meetings, including town meeting. And I wonder if there is, you know, whether it be interest or support from the finance committee, just in, you know, an email or a letter to the selectmen, just, you know, expressing our support for doing, you know, joint meetings like the one that would happen in the end of February over Zoom, and coming up with some sort of, you know, outdoor or, you know, other alternative for town meeting.
Steph, can
Yeah,
I
it'll
jump
be a
in
Zoom
there?
meeting for sure, you know, no question.
Well,
Well, I have
in
those
the
same
past, you said that that there was an obstacle to that, and the selectmen tend to meet in person.
No, they do, but we've as soon as we went into red status, we gave the board a recommendation, and they've accepted it to go back to board meetings by Zoom.
Okay.
So there's no public allowed anymore in the building. They're not in there. So it's going by Zoom, and it'll be that way until at minimum we're out of red status, and it's likely to be that way for the foreseeable future. So I wouldn't anticipate between now and 6 weeks that would change, and I think they're comfortable using Zoom. So, you know, it certainly wouldn't hurt to express that to them, and also express the idea of support for an outdoor meeting, because the sooner that decision's made, the more time you have for logistics. And Pat brought up a good point that if we were to time it right with the DY graduation, potentially, if that stays on track, you could get bang for the buck by renting. They would already be renting equipment for graduation, and we could piggyback on that and save a few dollars potentially.
Could push us from our April anticipated date further into early June, but I think still it'll give time for vaccines to happen and a better response from the community for the town meeting.
It'd be a lot warmer.
Yeah,
Amen
I
to
mean,
that.
we're still gonna have a lot of cases in April. I mean, I don't think anybody should be under the estimation that, you know, what we're seeing now is gonna magically disappear on the first sunny day in April. It's just not gonna happen.
Yeah, the charter calls for the fourth Tuesday in April as town meeting, but it can be adjusted based on these kinds of circumstances.
Yeah, we're still under the emergency order. The board can
Right.
make the move. Yeah.
Exactly.
So a lot to think about.
And I haven't looked at the town clerk's proposed budget yet, but I really think this is the time to bring back the remote voting clicker thingies. I'm sure there's
That's a question I have with the clerk, and certainly if that's the I don't know what the estimated cost is right now. We had one a few years ago, but certainly if you send a, you know, recommendation or request to Mary to do that research, you can come to the meeting with that, and, you know, certainly we can, you know, there'll be money available like there always is to do certain things, you know.
We
So-
should at least borrow them from another town if we can't get them ourselves.
I don't know, I talked to Mary. Mary's she's the expert, so.
I don't know how the technology works, so yeah, Mary would be the gal, and she's already on board to work with this outdoor meeting with me.
The
So
last
now
thing I have is from all the members, if you could, Dan Horgan's trying to update all the contact information for all committees with emails and phone numbers, cell phones, or whatever you're comfortable giving. So if everyone who could possibly email me their information, I have some already, so you know who I have if I have it. But
You're all
anybody that has not sent that.
I think you're all set, Mr. Chairman. Pam
What?
sent you 2 emails, and I thought they were complete.
Was that with with phone numbers for the finance committee though? I didn't think it was, but
Yeah, it was phone numbers and emails for
okay.
each member, but if you don't find that to be true, let me know and I'll go back. But I thought we had 2, and we did it for capital budget as well.
I got capital budget. Oh, you know what? Thank you. I got it. Scratch that.
And is that for public distribution on the website, or is that just for internal use?
Internal.
Internal.
Yeah.
So I would ask, as we move forward now, and I've been working with the committee as Bob comes in, and we'll probably step in with Dan. Do you want me to continue, or do you want, because Bob will be here again two days a week. I'm hoping that he feels this is one of his priority meetings to attend, but I'd be happy to stay with you through this process and through town meeting if you so desire. If not, they might assign Kyle or someone else to do this, but if you'd like, I think the continuity would be good and I'd be happy to do that with you.
Yeah, we'd love to have you stay on.
Okay.
Yeah.
In case it's
Oh.
recommended elsewhere, I'll make sure that I strongly recommend I stay, and Dan will too, right, Dan?
Yeah, I am also, I got a candidate on the hook for your meeting minutes. I got a very interested person. I should be getting the appropriate paperwork, documents that we need to bring that person on board over the weekend. And hopefully she'll be ready to go sometime next week and catch up. So,
There's the answer.
That
Excellent.
would be great. I don't have to appoint anybody.
no, not right now. So,
Looking
And
at
we
you,
should
Jack.
Probably when that person comes on, just perhaps maybe under new business for one of our upcoming meetings, we could just have a quick conversation, very quick,
Sure.
about what it is that we all agree our consensus is in terms of what the should be contained in the minutes. Because I do feel like we don't want to send mixed messages to
yeah,
whoever.
so she started with, I gave her the guide to the open meeting law, which sets the basic minimum framework for what a scribe needs to include in public meeting business minutes. So if you haven't seen that, we can certainly send that document to you.
Great.
And then you can go from there.
Okay.
All
She
right.
wasn't afraid, by the way. I sent her some links to some past meetings and I said, take a look. Here's what it looks like. Is this something you'd like to do? And she wasn't afraid. So she said, okay. So
There are far scarier boards and committees.
there are.
Jack, I was really looking forward to see what your minutes were going to look like.
Jack, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Best.
The minutes are going to be verbal.
That's how they were done in the old days, right, Jack?
That's right.
I think we're looking for a motion here.
Move we adjourn.
Second.
Roll call vote, sir.
Thank you, Sarah,
Aye.
Steph,
Aye.
George,
Aye.
Jack,
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Robert has stepped away, and myself, I am an aye as well. I believe that's all. That was rather long, but thanks for sticking with it. Appreciate it.
Yep. Thank you. We'll see you
Thank
next week.
you.
Thank you,
Aye.
Dan.